I never anticipated that an ordinary Friday night could unravel everything, shift the ground beneath my feet in ways I couldn't foresee. It was just another evening when Carlos, my partner's son, invited me to a movie, a ritual we'd shared countless times since his father and I began dating. Yet, something about this night felt heavier, charged with an unspoken current. The movie we chose was unremarkable, neither of us particularly invested, but the air between us hummed with a strange electricity. At 46, I'd always been at ease with myself, content in my skin, savouring the quiet confidence of age. Carlos, 24, carried a different energy, vibrant, athletic, his smile a spark that could light up the dimmest room. We settled into the back row of the theatre, where shadows draped us in secrecy, the distance from the sparse audience creating a cocoon of intimacy. At first, it was familiar, his soft chuckles at my whispered remarks, our usual banter. But as the film flickered on, I felt his presence differently, his arm brushing mine, lingering just a moment too long. My pulse quickened, a warmth spreading through me, unbidden, unfamiliar. I could have pulled away, could have broken the spell with a word, but I didn't. Instead, I stayed, caught in the gravity of his nearness, the darkness amplifying every sensation. His hand grazed mine, deliberate, no longer accidental, and my breath caught, suspended in the quiet tension. The movie played on, its dialogue a distant hum, irrelevant against the silent questions passing between us. In that moment, I knew something had shifted, a line blurred, and the night, once ordinary, had become a threshold to something unknown, something we couldn't ignore. I never anticipated that an ordinary Friday night could unravel everything, shift the ground beneath my feet in ways I couldn't foresee. It was just another evening when Carlos, my partner's son, invited me to a movie, a ritual we'd shared countless times since his father and I began dating. Yet, something about this night felt heavier, charged with an unspoken current. The movie we chose was unremarkable, neither of us particularly invested, but the air between us hummed with a strange electricity. At 46, I'd always been at ease with myself, content in my skin, savouring the quiet confidence of age. Carlos, 24, carried a different energy, vibrant, athletic, his smile a spark that could light up the dimmest room. We settled into the back row of the theatre, where shadows draped us in secrecy, the distance from the sparse audience creating a cocoon of intimacy. At first, it was familiar, his soft chuckles at my whispered remarks, our usual banter. But as the film flickered on, I felt his presence differently, his arm brushing mine, lingering just a moment too long. My pulse quickened, a warmth spreading through me, unbidden, unfamiliar. I could have pulled away, could have broken the spell with a word, but I didn't. Instead, I stayed, caught in the gravity of his nearness, the darkness amplifying every sensation. His hand grazed mine, deliberate, no longer accidental, and my breath caught, suspended in the quiet tension. The movie played on, its dialogue a distant hum, irrelevant against the silent questions passing between us. In that moment, I knew something had shifted, a line blurred, and the night, once ordinary, had become a threshold to something unknown, something we couldn't ignore. We chose the last row, as if by unspoken agreement, the sparse audience scattered far enough to grant us a private world, a shadowed sanctuary where the rules of propriety seemed to blur. From the moment we sat, I felt his gaze, not casual but searching, a silent question that made my skin prickle with awareness. The movie began, its opening scenes heavy with emotion, each frame a mirror to the tension coiling between us, the characters' whispered conflicts echoing our own unspoken truths. Carlos didn't wait long, his hand finding mine in the dark, his fingers brushing against my skin with a deliberateness that stole my breath. No longer the tentative touches of before, but a bold, quiet claim. I froze, my heart a wild drumbeat, caught between the instinct to pull away and the heat that surged through me, rooting me to the spot. His touch lingered, fingers interlacing with mine, a slow, deliberate dance that felt like a conversation without words, each movement asking permission, each pause an answer. I could have stopped it, could have leaned away, could have broken the spell with a single gesture, but my body betrayed my mind, leaning closer, drawn to the warmth of his presence, the intensity of his nearness. The darkness wrapped around us, an accomplice to our silence, amplifying every sensation. The brush of his arm against mine, the faint rhythm of his breath, the way his thumb traced a soft arc across my knuckles, igniting sparks beneath my skin. My breathing quickened, shallow and unsteady, as his hand slid from mine to my arm, leaving a trail of fire in its wake, a touch so light, yet so heavy with intent. The movie played on, its dialogue a distant hum, irrelevant against the story unfolding in our shadowed corner, where the world had narrowed to the space between us. I felt his breath against my ear, a whisper so soft it was almost lost in the cinema's ambient noise. "I can't stop thinking about you." His voice low, raw, laced with something I couldn't decipher. Desire, perhaps, or a deeper confession? My lips parted, but no words came. My response carried in the way I turned toward him, my eyes meeting his in the faint glow of the screen, finding in them a mixture of curiosity and certainty, a look that held me captive. I moved closer, involuntary, instinctive, my body answering before my mind could protest. And when our lips met, the kiss was soft at first, exploratory, a tentative bridge across the chasm we'd been circling. But the softness gave way to urgency, a hunger that surprised me, his hand sliding to my waist, pulling me nearer, the contact sending a shiver through me, electric and undeniable. The movie's score swelled, its characters grappling with their own forbidden desires, a parallel to our own silent rebellion, and I felt his fingers press against my back, grounding me in the moment, anchoring me to him. My hands found his shoulders, clinging to the fabric of his shirt, as if to steady myself against the tide of sensation threatening to sweep me away. The kiss deepened, a slow burn that consumed all thought, all reason, leaving only the heat of his touch, the rhythm of his breath, the way our bodies seemed to move in sync, a dance choreographed by instinct. The cinema's darkness cloaked us, shielding us from prying eyes, though the thrill of being unseen only heightened the awareness of what we were doing, the line we were crossing. His hand traced the curve of my spine, deliberate, careful yet bold, each movement a question, each sigh from me an answer, a surrender to the moment. The movie's climax roared on the screen, unnoticed as we crafted our own narrative, one of whispers and touches, of boundaries blurred and promises unspoken. When the lights flickered on, signalling the film's end, our breaths were ragged, our bodies still humming with the aftershocks of what we'd shared. We pulled apart, just enough to compose ourselves, but our eyes locked, and in that gaze, I saw the weight of what had passed between us. Not just a fleeting moment, but a shift, a turning point that neither of us could undo. We sat in silence as the credits rolled, the theatre emptying around us, the tension between us a living thing, palpable, undeniable. As we left the cinema, the cool night air did little to quell the heat still lingering in my veins, and I knew, with a clarity that both thrilled and terrified me, that this was no longer a game, no longer a fleeting spark, but something deeper, something that would demand answers, consequences, choices. Carlos's hand brushed mine as we walked, a fleeting touch that carried the weight of everything unsaid, and I felt the pull of him, the inevitability of what was to come, knowing we had stepped too far to turn back.
The days that followed our second cinema encounter were a tangle of anticipation and unease, each moment at home charged with a secret only Carlos and I understood, our glances fleeting but heavy, laden with the weight of what we'd unleashed in the dark. Every shared space, the kitchen, the hallway, became a stage for stolen looks, his dark eyes catching mine with an intensity that made my pulse stutter, a silent acknowledgement of the fire we'd kindled. We played our parts well, maintaining the facade of normalcy, exchanging polite smiles that hid the truth, but beneath the surface, the air crackled with possibility, with the unspoken question of what came next. When Carlos proposed another movie, his voice casual but his gaze anything but, I felt the pull of inevitability, my acceptance immediate, reckless, driven by a need I couldn't name. We arrived at the cinema like any other pair, two people bound by a shared errand, but the moment we stepped into the theater's shadowed embrace, the pretense fell away, the world outside dissolving into irrelevance. We claimed the last row again, our sanctuary, where the dim glow of the screen cast long shadows and the sparse audience granted us solitude. My heart pounded, 1,000 beats a minute as we settled into our seats, the space between us already shrinking, charged with the memory of our last encounter. The movie began, its scenes unfolding with a restless energy, but it was a mere backdrop, a forgotten script against the story we were writing in whispers and touches. Carlos moved first, his hand finding mine with a confidence that sent a jolt through me, his fingers curling around mine. Warm, deliberate, a silent vow. I didn't pull away, couldn't, my body leaning into his orbit, drawn by a force stronger than reason. His touch was no longer tentative, no longer a question, but a statement, his fingers tracing slow patterns across my palm, igniting sparks that traveled up my arm, settling deep in my chest. The darkness was our ally, cloaking us in secrecy, amplifying every sensation, the brush of his shoulder against mine, the faint rhythm of his breath, the way his thumb grazed my wrist, deliberate, unhurried. My breathing grew shallow, my skin alive under his touch, and when his hand slid to my arm, then my waist, I felt a tremor run through me, a heat that threatened to consume every thought. The movie's dialogue faded, its characters' struggles a distant echo of our own, and I turned to him, finding his eyes in the half-light, their intensity pinning me in place, a mix of desire and something deeper, something that scared me as much as it thrilled me. His breath grazed my ear, a whisper that barely reached me. This is more than before. His voice low, rough, carrying a truth we both felt but hadn't dared name. I didn't respond, not with words. My answer in the way I leaned closer, my lips seeking his. The kiss soft at first, a tentative reconnection, but it quickly deepened. Urgent, hungry, a collision of need and surrender. His hand pressed against my back, pulling me closer, the contact sending shivers through me, electric, undeniable. My fingers found his chest, clutching the fabric of his shirt, anchoring myself against the tide of sensation threatening to sweep me away. The kiss was a language of its own, speaking of boundaries crossed, of lines we no longer cared to draw, and as his lips moved against mine, I felt the world narrow to the space between us, the cinema's darkness a cocoon for our reckless dance. His hand slid lower, tracing the curve of my spine, each touch a spark, each movement a question answered by the way my body arched toward him, instinctive, unthinking. The movie's score swelled, its rhythm mirroring our own, a silent choreography of whispers and caresses, our bodies moving in sync, lost in a rhythm only we could hear. The thrill of being unseen, of knowing the audience was oblivious to the storm unfolding in our corner, only heightened the intensity, the awareness of every brush of skin, every shared breath. His lips left mine, trailing to my neck, a soft kiss that made me sigh, a sound I barely recognized as my own, and I felt his smile against my skin, a quiet acknowledgement of the power we held over each other. My hands moved to his shoulders, then his hair, pulling him closer, needing the weight of him, the reality of him, to ground me in this moment. The movie reached its climax, unnoticed, as we crafted our own, a story of forbidden connection, of desires we no longer fought. When the lights flickered on, signaling the end, our breaths were uneven, our bodies still humming with the aftershocks of what we'd shared, and we pulled apart, just enough to compose ourselves, our eyes meeting in a silent pact. We sat through the credits, the theater emptying around us, the tension between us a living thing, pulsing, undeniable. As we left, his hand brushed mine, a fleeting touch that carried the weight of everything we'd done.
Everything we couldn't undo. The cool night air did nothing to quell the heat in my veins, and I knew, with a clarity that both exhilarated and terrified me, that this was no longer a fleeting spark, no longer a moment we could walk away from. We had crossed a threshold, stepped into a space where rules no longer applied, where the pull between us was stronger than any restraint. Carlos's gaze lingered as we walked, a silent promise of more, and I felt the weight of it, the certainty that what we'd begun in that darkened theatre was only the start, a story we were both too entangled to stop writing. The days after our last cinema encounter were a delicate dance of restraint and longing, each moment at home laced with a tension only Carlos and I could feel, our shared glances heavy with secrets, electric with the promise of what we'd unleashed. At 46, I prided myself on control, on navigating life's complexities with clarity. But Carlos, at 24, with his quiet confidence and eyes that held a challenge, had unraveled me, stirred something I couldn't suppress. Every encounter in the house, the brush of shoulders in the hallway, the linger of his gaze over dinner, felt like a spark waiting to ignite, a silent conversation no one else could hear. One night, as I stood in the kitchen, the hum of the coffee maker filling the silence, I sensed him before he spoke, his presence a quiet storm that shifted the air. "Do you sleep early tonight?" he asked, his voice low, deliberate, the words carrying a weight that made my hand tremble on the cup. I turned, meeting his eyes, dark and unyielding, their intensity pulling me in, daring me to step closer. "Depends," I replied, feigning calm, though my pulse betrayed me. Maybe we could watch something here. The suggestion hung between us, heavy with meaning, the idea of a movie at home more intimate, more dangerous than the cinema's shadowed rows. We settled in the living room. The TV's faint glow, casting shadows across his face, the movie a forgotten backdrop as soon as it began, its dialogue lost to the charge between us. Carlos sat close, too close, his warmth a pull I couldn't resist, and when he spoke, his voice was a whisper, raw, vulnerable. "This isn't just a game, is it?" My breath caught, the truth of his words a weight I'd avoided naming, and I nodded, unable to lie. "I know." His hand found mine, fingers tracing slow, deliberate paths across my skin, each touch a question, each pause an answer, and I felt my resolve crumble, my body leaning into his orbit. The room seemed to shrink, the world outside fading, leaving only the heat of his gaze, the rhythm of his breath. "Tell me to stop," he murmured, his voice deeper, rougher, but the words I should have said stayed trapped, silenced by the need coursing through me. His fingers rose to my face, brushing my jaw with a softness that made my heart stutter, his breath grazing my lips, a moment suspended, waiting for my choice. I closed my eyes, letting go, and when our mouths met, the kiss was slow, deliberate, a careful exploration of a line we'd already crossed, but now fully embraced. My fingers clutched his shirt, anchoring me as the world blurred, the kiss deepening, a quiet storm of need and certainty. His hand slid to my waist, pulling me closer, the contact sending shivers through me, electric, undeniable, and I sighed against his lips, a sound that felt like surrender. The movie played on, ignored, its flickering light accentuating the intensity of his gaze, the way his fingers traced my back, each touch a spark, each movement a vow. We moved in sync, a silent dance of whispers and caresses, lost in a moment that felt both forbidden and inevitable. When we parted, our breaths uneven, our eyes locked, and I saw the same certainty in him, the knowledge that we'd stepped too far to turn back. I rose, his gaze following me as I moved toward the door, pausing just long enough to whisper, "Good night, Carlos?" The words heavy with everything unsaid, everything we both knew. The house was silent as I walked away, but the echo of his touch lingered, a promise that this was only the beginning. A story we were too entangled to escape,